The emergency shuttle broke free from Helios 9 with a violent shudder, Marcus's hands steady on the controls despite the chaos unfolding behind them. The Lyrian diplomatic vessel had launched in pursuit, its weapon systems powering up. "They're going to fire on us," Lyra observed calmly from the co-pilot's seat. "Diplomatic vessels aren't supposed to have weapons," Marcus muttered, executing a desperate evasive maneuver as energy beams cut through space where they had been moments before. "It seems regulations matter little when genocidal weapons are at stake," Lyra replied, placing her palms on the shuttle's navigation console. The small craft systems immediately responded, enhancing shields and rerouting power in ways Marcus hadn't known were possible. "Where are we going?" he asked, watching the pursuing vessel growing smaller on their scanners. "The Epsilon Nebula," Lyra answered. "Its radiation will mask our signature and prevent them from tracking my biological markers." As they approached the swirling cosmic gases, Lyra's expression grew determined. "Before we disappear, there's one more thing we must do." Her luminescence intensified as she connected with the shuttle's communication array. "I'm broadcasting everything, the weapon specifications, the High Command's colonization plans, my testimony as a council member, to every major diplomatic outpost in the sector. They'll try to discredit you," Marcus warned. "Some will believe. Some will investigate. That's all we need." She smiled faintly. Dictatorships fear nothing more than scrutiny. The shuttle plunged into the nebula's protective embrace, and the Lyrian vessel broke off pursuit rather than risk the radiation interference. Hours later, they emerged on the far side, setting course for a small, unmarked planet on the edge of charted space. The world they landed on, Proxima 4 in official records, though locally known as Haven, was a frontier settlement populated by species from across the galaxy seeking to escape their pasts. Its diverse inhabitants asked few questions of newcomers, making it the perfect sanctuary. 6 months passed in relative peace. Marcus and Lyra established themselves in a modest dwelling at the settlement's edge, their story vague enough to avoid suspicion but ordinary enough to avoid interest. Marcus found work maintaining the colony's aging infrastructure, while Lyra used her abilities discreetly to enhance the settlement's agricultural systems. News traveled slowly to Haven, but eventually reports reached them of a diplomatic crisis engulfing the Lyrian High Command. The evidence Lyra had broadcast had indeed found believers, enough to force an investigation by the Galactic Alliance. Thaxos and his co-conspirators had been removed from power pending the inquiry. "Do you regret it?" Marcus asked one evening as they watched Haven's twin moons rise. "Leaving your world, your position, everything you knew?" Lyra's luminescence pulsed softly in the gathering darkness. "Power without principle is meaningless, Marcus. I could not watch my people become oppressors." "And us?" he ventured, the question that had lingered unspoken between them for months. She turned to him, those violet eyes reflecting the moonlight. "We are what the old philosophers of my world called Azura, souls joined by choice rather than fate." Her hand found his, her touch sending the now familiar warmth through their connected minds. "A human and a telepathic, genetically encoded fugitive," Marcus laughed softly. "Not exactly the traditional partnership." "No," Lyra agreed, her luminescence brightening with amusement. "We are something entirely new." She gazed toward the stars, where somewhere the ripples of change they had initiated continued to spread. "Perhaps that is exactly what the galaxy needs." As night fully enveloped Haven, they remained together under the alien sky, two beings from worlds apart, united by a choice that had altered the course of countless lives, including their own. Their future remained uncertain, but for the first time in both their lives, it was truly theirs to determine. Marcus Armstrong stared at the softly glowing contract floating above his desk terminal. The pulsing "confirm" button seemed to mock him with each gentle throb of light. 42 years old, chief systems engineer on Outpost Helios 9, and so desperately alone that he was actually considering purchasing a sentient being as a companion. "This is insane," he muttered, running a hand through his graying hair. The advertisement had appeared on his feed 3 days ago: exotic companions for the discerning spacer, companionship beyond the stars. The trader, a Centaurian with too many eyes and not enough scruples, had shown him holographic previews of various companions available for purchase. This particular specimen, the trader had said, gesturing to a shimmering blue-skinned humanoid female figure, is from the Lyrian system. Highly intelligent, adaptable, and... He had leaned forward with a conspiratorial wink of his central eye, most accommodating to human preferences. Marcus knew it was wrong. The Galactic Compact explicitly forbade sentient trafficking, but out here on the rim of civilized space, such laws were often just suggestions. His finger hovered over the confirmation button. 3 years alone on this station, with only the occasional supply ship visit for human contact, had worn his principles dangerously thin. Confirmed, the terminal chirped, startling Marcus. He hadn't consciously pressed the button, but there it was, transaction complete. A delivery notice indicated his package would arrive on tomorrow's supply shuttle. Sleep evaded him that night. What had he done? What kind of person had loneliness transformed him into? The supply shuttle docked with a metallic clang that reverberated through the station. Marcus waited anxiously in the receiving bay as the regular cargo was unloaded: oxygen filters, hydroponic supplies, the usual necessities for a remote outpost. Then came a cylindrical container, roughly the size of a stasis pod, bearing his name. "Special delivery, Armstrong," grunted the shuttle pilot, a weathered woman named Rodriguez who'd been making runs to Helios 9 for years. "Don't remember you ordering anything this big before." Marcus attempted nonchalance. "New environmental monitoring equipment." Rodriguez raised an eyebrow but asked no further questions. As soon as the shuttle departed, Marcus approached the container with trembling hands. A simple bioscan unlocked the seal, and the pod hissed open with a cloud of cryogenic mist. As the vapor cleared, Marcus found himself staring into the most piercing violet eyes he'd ever seen. They belonged to a humanoid female with skin the color of Earth's oceans, not blue as the hologram had shown, but a deep teal with subtle bioluminescent patterns that shifted like currents. Her features were almost human, yet undeniably alien: slightly elongated ears, a delicate ridge along her forehead, and those extraordinary eyes. "I am Lyra," she said, her voice melodic and perfect despite the universal translator embedded in Marcus's ear. "And you are not what I expected either." Marcus stepped back, startled. "You speak English?" A slight smile curved her lips. "I speak directly to your mind. The translator is unnecessary." "Telepathic?" Marcus whispered, suddenly acutely aware of every inappropriate thought he'd had since viewing her hologram. "Yes," she replied, gracefully stepping from the pod. "And you've made a terrible mistake, Marcus Armstrong. I am not merchandise to be purchased." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "But perhaps we can help each other. You require companionship, and I require sanctuary. Your government has treaties with mine that would force my return if my presence were officially reported." "Return to what?" Marcus asked. Lyra's luminescent patterns darkened. "To a fate far worse than being sold to a lonely human." For the first time, Marcus noticed the intricate scars partially hidden beneath her hairline. Whatever she was running from had already left its mark. "I didn't know," he began, shame washing over him. "No," she said, her expression softening. "But now you must decide, Marcus Armstrong. Will you report me as contraband or will you help me?" Part 2: Unexpected Abilities. The days following Lyra's arrival on Helios 9 brought a strange rhythm to Marcus's once monotonous life. They established cautious boundaries. She took the small guest quarters, while Marcus kept to his own cabin. Their meals were shared in awkward silence, broken only by Marcus's occasional attempts at small talk and Lyra's measured responses. What exactly are your abilities? Marcus finally asked one evening, pushing his synthetic protein around his plate. Lyra studied him with those unsettling violet eyes. My species evolved as symbiotic organisms. We connect with technology as easily as you connect with other humans. You can interface with machines? More than interface, she replied, extending her hand toward Marcus's malfunctioning tablet that had been frustrating him for weeks. The device lit up without being touched, its screen flickering through diagnostics and repair protocols faster than Marcus could follow. Impressive party trick, he muttered, trying to mask his unease. It's not a trick, Lyra said flatly. And it's the least of what I can do. Their conversation was interrupted by a station-wide alarm. Marcus's communicator buzzed with urgency. Armstrong. Get to environmental control now. The voice of Technician Patel, his second-in-command, was tight with panic. Oxygen recyclers are failing across 3 sectors. Marcus bolted from his chair, Lyra following close behind. The corridors were filled with the station's skeleton crew of 12, faces tense as emergency protocols initiated. In environmental control, displays flashed red as systems cascaded toward failure. Life support backups not engaging, Patel reported, fingers flying across control panels. Radiation from that solar flare must have fried something vital. We've got maybe 30 minutes before oxygen levels become critical. Marcus immediately dove into the system diagnostics, but the problem was elusive, something in the core programming was corrupted beyond recognition. Let me, Lyra said quietly, stepping forward. This isn't the time, Marcus began, but fell silent as Lyra placed her palms against the main console. The bioluminescent patterns on her skin intensified, flowing like quicksilver down her arms and seeming to merge with the station systems. The room fell silent as screens stabilized, then began restoring green status indicators one by one. Lyra's eyes were closed in concentration, her breathing shallow. What the hell is she doing? Patel whispered, backing away. Saving our lives, Marcus answered, watching in awe as the oxygen levels stabilized and rose. When the last system returned to normal, Lyra collapsed. Marcus caught her before she hit the floor. She's not human, Patel said, stating the obvious with fear in her voice. No, Marcus agreed, lifting Lyra's surprisingly light form. She's something much more valuable. Later, when Lyra regained consciousness in Marcus's quarters, her luminescence was dimmed, her skin pallid. You shouldn't have revealed yourself, Marcus said softly. I couldn't let you die, she replied. That would have been inconvenient for my plans. Marcus smiled despite himself. Is that your way of saying you care? It's my way of saying I've revealed myself to your crew, and now decisions must be made. She sat up weakly. They will report me. Patel has agreed to keep quiet for now. The others too. You saved their lives. That buys time, nothing more. Lyra's expression grew distant. There are others searching for me, Marcus. And they're far closer than you realize. The supply shuttle arrived 3 weeks early, which was the first indication something was wrong. Marcus watched from the observation deck as the sleek black vessel docked, not the usual cargo hauler, but a diplomatic courier bearing the insignia of the Galactic Alliance. They're here for me, Lyra said, appearing silently at his side. You don't know that, Marcus countered, though the unusual shuttle left little doubt. Station Commander Richards's voice came over the comm system. All senior personnel to the conference room immediately. We have distinguished visitors. When Marcus arrived, 3 towering figures in iridescent formal attire were already seated. Their skin bore the same teal coloration as Lyra's, but their bioluminescent patterns were rigid, formal, military. Engineer Armstrong, Commander Richards nodded tensely. These representatives from the Lyrian High Command have some questions about unauthorized technology that may have passed through our station. The tallest Lyrian stood, his movements liquid. I am Tribunal Overseer Thaxos. We track a dangerous fugitive, a scientist who stole classified technology before fleeing Lyrian space. His voice resonated oddly, bypassing the translator and speaking directly to their minds. What kind of technology? Marcus asked carefully. A biological weapon, Thaxos replied. The fugitive, designated specimen K-927, was the lead researcher on a defense project. She became unstable, stole the prototype, and fled. She is both dangerous and deeply disturbed. Marcus maintained a neutral expression. I don't see what this has to do with our remote station. Our tracking indicates she was transported here approximately 28 days ago, another Lyrian said. We must search your facility. Commander Richards looked uncomfortable but nodded. Of course. We will cooperate fully. As the meeting disbanded, Marcus slipped away to find Lyra. She was in his quarters, already gathering the few possessions she'd acquired. They're calling you Specimen K-927, he said. A military designation. Her hands trembled slightly. Did they mention what I supposedly stole? A biological weapon. They say you're dangerous and unstable. Lyra's luminescence flared with emotion. And you believe them? Marcus hesitated only momentarily. No. But it doesn't matter what I believe. They're searching the station. We need to hide you. There's nowhere to hide from them. Their psionic abilities can sense my presence. She touched his hand, and suddenly Marcus's mind filled with images, a sterile laboratory, Lyra connecting to complex machinery, her discovery of plans for a weapon that targeted specific genetic markers. They're not creating a defense system, she explained. They're creating a cleansing tool to eliminate competing species in territories they wish to colonize. Starting with the Arcturon settlements near our border. Before Marcus could respond, his communicator buzzed. Armstrong, report to engineering. The Lyrian delegates wish to inspect your primary systems. Go, Lyra whispered. Act normally. I'll find a way out of this. As Marcus left, the weight of his decision pressed down on him. Harboring a fugitive, possibly a terrorist, could end his career, or worse. Yet something in those violet eyes made him trust her more than the cold formality of her pursuers. The Lyrian officials' inspection grew increasingly intrusive as they moved through the station. Equipment was disassembled, personnel questioned, and living quarters searched. Marcus maintained a facade of cooperation while trying to devise an escape plan for Lyra. He found her in the rarely used observation dome, staring at the stars. The emergency shuttle bay lay just one level below, their only potential route off the station. They've nearly finished their search, Marcus said quietly. They'll find you soon. I know. Lyra turned to face him, her luminescence pulsing with determination. It's time you knew the full truth, Marcus. Then you can decide whether I'm worth the risk you're taking. She placed her palms against his temples, and Marcus gasped as his mind flooded with memories not his own. He saw Lyra, not as a scientist, but as a high counselor, discovering classified files about Project Genesis. He felt her horror as she understood the weapon's true purpose, not just targeting the Arcturans, but eventually all non-Lyrian species considered evolutionary competitors. The memories shifted to her theft of the project's core module, a biological key encoded within her own cellular structure. Her desperate flight, the betrayal by her own government, and their relentless pursuit. When the connection broke, Marcus staggered backward. You're not just a scientist, he whispered. You're one of their leaders. I was, she corrected. Now I'm a traitor to my species, according to them. The weapon's prototype is encoded in my genetic material. They need me to activate it. A commotion from the corridor interrupted them, the search party was approaching. I've transmitted the station's security codes to your emergency shuttle, Lyra said quickly. But I won't ask you to leave with me. You have a life here. Marcus laughed bitterly. A life? Watching systems decay on a forgotten outpost? He took her hand. I've been sleepwalking for years, Lyra. Whether this ends in disaster or not, at least I'll be awake. The door to the observation dome slid open, revealing Thaxos and his team. K-927, Thaxos intoned, you have violated Council directives and endangered Lyrian security. Surrender for extraction. She's not going anywhere, Marcus stepped forward protectively. Human, Thaxos's voice hardened, this matter exceeds your understanding. This fugitive possesses technology that could destabilize the balance of power in 3 sectors. I know exactly what she possesses, Marcus replied. And what you intend to do with it. Thaxos's expression shifted subtly. Then you are complicit in her crimes. He gestured to his subordinates. Take them both. Marcus hit the emergency panel beside him. The station alarms blared as emergency containment protocols engaged, temporarily sealing off sections of the station, including the observation dome. Run, he shouted, grabbing Lyra's hand as they bolted for the maintenance shaft that led directly to the shuttle bay.